See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God. This last week, I was at Valparaiso University in Indiana for the annual Institute of Liturgical Studies. I hadn't been to this event in a number of years, but I was there with a number of people that I hadn't seen or people I've been in touch with, but I don't get to be with very often. It was a little bit of a homecoming for me, and it was a lot of fun. And at one point, I was in a conversation with a couple of colleagues, one of whom was pregnant with her third child. She had 2 young children and was pregnant with number 3, and another of whom has children who are now in college. And it was a funny conversation that happens sometimes in these situations where the mother of the young children was essentially asking for reassurance that things would get better. To the point of saying, please lie to me if you have to, but I am told that the step from 2 to 3 is easier than the step from 1 to 2. And I said, it absolutely is. Absolutely is. On the one hand, this need for reassurance that the struggles of early childhood will sort of smooth out and things will get easier, at least in certain respects. And on the other hand, there were the other 2 of us who were kind of at a different stage of life, feeling a certain wistfulness that this was now all behind us, that experience of loving a new life simply for what it is, wanting and needing nothing from it except for it to thrive and grow, was now in the past and wouldn't come back again. There is a strange chasm between those stages of life in which they are not comprehensible to each other, even though if you've gotten to one, that means you've already passed through the other. And you just weren't aware that that's what you were doing. That's part of the mystery of life. One of the signs of humanity's incorrigible corruption is that we have somehow started to ask the question somewhere along the line, why do people love children so much? And one theory comes from evolutionary biology, which is that our children represent this massive investment in time and in calories and in physical health and toil that human children take so long to gestate, and they're so fragile early on, and we pour all this love and protection into their lives because they represent and are, in fact, our genes living on to the next generation. That it's all an effect of our genetic self-interest. It's not the love of one person for another. It is the love of genes for themselves. This is the theory that has sometimes been called the selfish gene. And I am thankful that if genes are in fact selfish, they're very easy to fool. Because I've cared for children, Carrie and I both, and our children, for children who are not our biological offspring. And I can say with a high degree of confidence that after a certain amount of time, after you've sat up at night with a child, after you've cared for them, worried about them, dressed them, bathed them, fed them, dealt with their problems, I would strongly suspect that if you put my brain, my head into an MRI and watched how my brain reacted to one of the children we fostered, it would have been identical to the way my brain reacted to our own biological children. So genes might be selfish, but they are gullible, and I'm very grateful for that. There is another school of thought that says that children represent the potential for adding to the family's welfare and their status, their honor, that that they're the continuation of the family line. They maybe contribute to the household economy, or they bring us a certain kind of cachet. When I am dead, my name will live on in my children, and I will be remembered through them. It's kind of a projection of our ego into the future. And there are people who've claimed that the kind of love that we show to children is a learned behavior. It's a culturally conditioned behavior. You don't see it in all times and all places. And it's something that we do because we were taught. It's not really an instinct at all. Now, I don't want to dismiss any of these approaches to human life. They're all developed by smart people. And to some extent, they account for the kind of tragic reality that nobody is perfect at this, and that there is a lot of failure built into the relationship between parents and children. That not everyone is capable of developing that kind of selfless bond, and all of us are incapable of expressing it fully in every time and in every place. But what I think all these theories miss is that the love of a human for a human child is not ultimately, I think, about what that child will do for us eventually down the line. It's about the love of life for itself. We love a child simply because it exists. There's a kind of awe involved in encountering a newborn that is hard to describe, because it is really life itself. Child can't talk, child can't do anything at all, and yet there is this concentration of love. Not the love of genes for themselves, not the love of my ego for its future life, but the love of existence for the things that exist. And I think a lot of sorrow in our lives comes from, in the process of maturing, realizing or at least believing that we need to approximate that experience of love through our own accomplishments. That we no longer are loved merely for the fact of our own existence, for the miracle of being something rather than nothing, but that we can create a basis on which to be loved through our success, through our respectability, through our accomplishments, through our desirability to others, through fulfilling our obligations, through devoting ourselves to good works. It's like trying to draw a circle by adding more and more sides to a polygon. You can get close, but you can't quite get there. The perfect circle of love that exists for its own sake is something we can never reach through all of our striving. And yet, there is part of us that never stops wanting that wants to be loved for simply being, not for being anything in particular, not for anything we've done, not for anything we've been, except for that particular gathering of matter and energy that makes a person. Interestingly, the only time I really see humans experience this kind of love over an extended period of time is at the end of life, when there's nothing a person can do for anyone anymore except to be loved, except to be the object of someone else's love and care, when you may not even be able to speak, let alone teach or edify. The love of life for life itself. I think that's why it's so important that John, in his letter to his community today, calls the people of his community children of God. He could have said disciples of God, or followers of God, or students of God, or lovers of God, or servants of God. All of these were very conventional terms for religious communities. They defined the community by the relationship the student, the human being took, the attitude that we take toward our Creator, toward the source of all life and all power. Even in Christianity, servant of God became a title for someone who was particularly devoted to the faith and the life of the church. But John doesn't do that. John says, you are children of God. That is to say that you are loved by God for your own sake, for the sake of your existence itself, and not because of anything you have done to establish your relationship with God. So much of the sorrow that happens within our faith is about confusion on this point. The belief that actually this relationship is the other way around. We can act or love or serve or devote our way into God's heart, rather than all of our love and service and devotion coming as an effect of the love God has already shown us. It is important to obey the will and the commandments of God, but it is the difference between obeying so that we will be accepted and obeying God because we have already been accepted. It is genuinely difficult to accept and embrace these words. We should be called children of God in a state of total dependency, in a state of total self-justification simply by being. That the author of existence loves the things that exist because they exist. In today's gospel, Jesus appears to his disciples with some words and actions that might be a little bit familiar from last week's story. If you were with us last week, you heard about Thomas, who was out of the room when Jesus appears, and Jesus shows his wounds, and then Thomas doesn't believe that his friend actually saw Jesus. Well, we hear a different version of that same kind of idea from Luke, the gospel writer, today. And he appears with his friends, and he says, "Peace be with you." They're terrified. They think they're seeing a ghost because they watched Jesus die. And they have doubts in their hearts and they have fear in their hearts. He shows them his hands and his feet. And the story says, and I find this very poignant, in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering. The joy and the disbelief, the joy and the wonder are mixed up together. And if that isn't a familiar feeling, then I think it's one that maybe is a trick of memory, because that is how life is so much of the time. And so how is Jesus going to prove to his friends that it is really him? How is he going to overcome their doubts and their fears? He could go for a demonstration of power. He could do like Zeus and create a little lightning cloud and a massive show of power, which could have the potentially negative side effect of burning up some of his disciples, because that's what happens when Zeus does it. Or he could argue with them. He could say, "What's wrong with you? Here's the evidence, here's the proof, accept the proof." He could have lectured them. He doesn't do any of those things. What does he do? He has something to eat. Broiled fish. Just like a good northern Wisconsin boy, just like I always knew Jesus was. Give me some broiled fish. Except we'd probably fry it. He takes, and Minnesota too, yeah. He takes the fish and he eats the fish. in a gesture of pure and perfect existence. The God who was from before all the ages in flesh as the Son who lived and suffered and died among us and was raised from the dead in a glorified body that can transcend time and space. And what does he still do? He still eats. He still exists with that pure and simple presence in the world that we have from the moments we draw our first breath. The love of existence for itself. I get asked, as you might expect from time to time, about heaven, and the truth is I don't have a lot to say about it. The Bible itself does not have a lot to say about it, so I guess I'm in good company there. But the truth is it's very difficult to project. It's very difficult to envision or imagine some kind of future state. If we just want to play out the human mind and the human life to infinity, what we're describing is hell, not heaven. What is so hard to imagine is a transformation. What's so hard to imagine is a state in which we are neither coming into existence nor decaying, and yet we are not trapped. We're not trapped in the limits of our own consciousness. And I don't think Jesus answers that question for us today. But he shows us something important about what the life of the world to come is. And that is that it includes eating broiled fish. That is to say, whatever the life of the world to come will be, it will not be less than what we are now. It will not be a shrunken, invisible, ghostly, spiritual parody of human life. But it will be something more, a stepping into the heart of existence itself, in which each atom knows and is known fully by the great tapestry of all existence. Beloved, we are God's children now. What we will be has not yet been revealed. What we do know is this: when he is revealed, we will be like him, for we will see him as he is, as the one who is loved from all eternity by God the Father, and the one who portrays that love with a perfection that no human parent can ever achieve, which no human relationship can do anything but gesture toward. That perfect love of life and existence for itself. Amen.